Finally, class, we got to the third stage, which is production. Here, I also inserted a series of different activities that can work. They are not necessarily ordered in levels of more challenging to least challenging, because that could be relative to the level and how much your students are able to produce, how confident they are, etc. Some of these activities are randomizers, board games, guessing games, role plays, and reporting the news. Let's start with the randomizers. We have a couple examples. The first one is for students to review adjective word order. So all the options here are correct, okay? Also on the first, on the green wheel, they can find not only adjectives, but adverbs. Any of the options that they choose will be correct in terms of order because, well, the teacher needs to pay close attention to that. If we want to consolidate something, well, the options that they get should be correct. So they can choose what is the specific topic they want to talk about. For example, if we get the last time you bought an or a, and they need to find different options that will match, okay? Okay, I'm finding it hard to do this quickly. But, okay, the last time you met a famous, smart, old boss or teacher, for example. Okay? So this sentence is correct, and they need to discuss. When was it the last time that you met a famous, smart, old person? Oh, I've never met a person like that. I've met a lot of smart old people, but they were not famous, for example. So they have the chance to practice adjective and adverb word order, have a short conversation about each of the situations that they choose, and they are not necessarily thinking about the grammar anymore. They're just using it after having practiced it. Look at this other randomizer. This is another option where we are using questions on the borders and pictures also. So we can spin it. If you're working with the students, you can tell them, okay, tell me when to stop. And then they use the image to talk about what's going on with that person, what does he wish for, and tell a short story about it, right? So the first question is related to the picture in general, and the second question is to follow up a little bit more and personalize it for the student to talk about his own experience. So this is another way of using randomizers. There are always, well, really useful board games, and this is also a flippity template. You even have the dice inserted, right? Over here, you have a bunch of tokens for students to work in slightly bigger groups. And well, they can move along. In this case, they should be practicing. They don't want to practice different things. Well, you can insert challenges to make it a little bit more fun, but the main point here is using future tenses, especially future perfect versus continuous. So this usually leads to very interesting conversations. But remember that board games are more successful when students have already practiced and they feel more confident with what they have to do. That's why we leave it to the last stage of practicing the grammar. What is this? Okay, With this game, students need to use the ideas to tell each other answers and for the other person to guess what they're talking about. Okay, you can see that there are a bunch of activities, of ideas down here. So, for example, I silently look at them, read them, and so that's my classmate. And then I choose the one I want to talk about. So I start talking about it or answering, giving an answer if it were a question. So, for example, I start telling my classmate, well, definitely learning to drive because now it's very difficult. I never did it because blah, 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 blah. So once I have explained, my classmate has to guess what I'm talking about. Oh, are you talking about something that you always avoid doing around the house? No, I'm talking about something that from the past. So the other person can continue guessing. Oh, I know. You're talking about something that you regret not having done. Yes, that's right. So if my classmate guessed, he can drag that phrase to his side, right? And you take turns, and the students are going to be using the grammar here without even saying it out loud, right? I mean, analyzing it out loud. What is the grammar? Verb patterns, right? That means verbs followed by infinitive or by gerund or by bare infinitive. So this is another way of using language without thinking in a method linguistic way. Let's see the one before the last. Okay, role play games. We can have different kinds of role plays, right? With cards, so we assign roles to students, but this one is a little bit different. We create a kind of game. We insert even, well, that was so loud. We can even create some sort of intriguing atmosphere by inserting music, by having had an interesting conversation about mysteries, about detectives, about Sherlock Holmes, maybe. If we have been working with a reading on our audio on one of Sherlock Holmes' activities to present the language, maybe we can practice something like this, which I used with my students after we've been practicing past models of deduction. So before we start, we tell the students, it's gonna be your turn to be a detective. And the name of the mystery you're gonna try to find out is the diamond mystery. What happened? So we create the drama, right? You need to start by reading the crime report, right? So they have a description of the characters, of what happened, right? And they get like a general idea of who the people are and what the problem is. So after presenting the context, they have to start deducing. From this point on, they will be presented with a series of hints, right? So after they read every hint, together they make a deduction. As you can see, well, they don't need to, they are not going to get immediate feedback. They are just going to move on through the hints, right? And every time they are given a new hint, they need to analyze who the main suspect could be. Sometimes they have to radically change their minds. And well, in general, they have a lot of fun. And at the end of the hint section, they get the chance to choose what is the person that they think is to blame for the disappearance of the diamond. And at the very end, they can read what really happened. So they have the answer. But the most important part of all of this is not only that the students are, well, having some fun, reading something and talking about it, but they instinctively need to use the grammar that we have been practicing, right? There are some ideas that they need to complete, and in general, they don't stop there, they try to explain more. Finally, guys, this is even freer than all the others. And here we have an activity where students shuffle cards. And the idea is for them to report the news. They get a headline that is very unusual. For example, clone making machine found and hidden, right? So they have to play the game of being reporters with somebody else and try to see who can tell the craziest story. Usually I give them a time limit, like, okay, you're gonna have to talk about this for 1 minute or 2 minutes, depending on their student's level. In this case, because they're upper intermediate, it was 2 minutes. And they will have to use passive voice, right? Again, they usually use it without even thinking about it because it's language that comes up naturally when we are reporting news or events. So guys, I hope that all of these ideas can be useful to you. I just want to remind you that in order to teach grammar in an effective way and to help students internalize the structures better, we need to carefully present and analyze the language. We need to give students lots of gradually more challenging practice, both written and spoken. We need to create opportunities to use the language naturally once students have consolidated the structure, like the ones that we just went through. And very important, provide students with timely and moderate feedback at the right time. In this particular case, remember, we can be taking notes while the students play these games because we don't want to interrupt them, we don't want to cut their inspiration. But we can be taking notes to let them know what they did well, or sometimes we just give them additional practice, right? And we tell them, okay, guys, you still forget to use have when you're conjugating the third conditional. So you're going to be doing this for practice, okay? So those are different ways of letting students know what they did well and what they need to continue working on. See you in class. Thank you for your attention.